Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. This show is brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl.
As a member, I'll provide you a roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. Starting with a cock from one breeder and a hen from another breeder, no problem. We can help you to turn your flock of hybrid crosses or mongrels into a pure family or strain, and show you how to continually improve that strain each generation. We'll start by showing you how to select your seed fowl and how to turn that seed fowl into a high-quality foundation strain. Our proven breeding programs and specialty courses are designed to take you step by step through the breeding process. And best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
So stick with me a little while longer, because we're going to have a rootin', tootin', shootin' good time.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano, founder of the Breeders Academy, and I'm here with Nancy, my wife, and co-host Frank Bradley. What's going on, you guys?
You and Nancy married?
Yeah.
For like, I've suffered 40-something years.
It'll be 41 in July, dearest.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
How many marital spats? Talking about marital spats, I thought I had one in the chicken pen today. Looked in my pen as I was feeding, and Frank and I were talking about this earlier. I look in this pen, and this hen her feathers are sticking out all in different directions. She looks like hell. but they're eating together like they're not having any problems. I'm thinking, God, would they have a marital spat, with each other? And so I don't know what the heck happened.
It's probably the opposite, Kenny. It's not a spat. It's just they're really attracted to each other, and that's the reason her feathers look like that. She has a bad hair morning, I guess.
Maybe I got there just after the deed. I don't know. So
well, I was telling Kenny I had a walk pen, and I had 7 or 8 real nice brown and red pullets in it. I just had a young stag and put him in there, and I got to noticing one pullet had no feathers on her back. She looked awful. I told Kenny, I said she looked like she had been wadded up and shot out of a shotgun barrel. I mean, she just looked awful. But he picked her. That's the only one that he would even mess with or fool with. The others looked like a new penny, nice feather, nice plumage, all perfect. They'd walk around, and he wouldn't offer to bother them. He just that one pullet, and that was it.
Time to take her out. Let him pick on some others for a while. You know what I mean?
Actually, that's what I done. That's
Yeah.
what I done. But I didn't notice him single any out after that. So must have got it out of his system, I guess.
Yeah, because yesterday she was fine. She looked, I don't know what the heck happened. So I took him out, put him with another hen. He didn't seem to be rough with the other hen. So I don't know. We'll find out. I'll probably go out there and see that new hen all messed up too. But it was just all of a sudden. It was the weirdest thing because they've been together for a while.
She'd had enough.
Hey, I've had them do that. Especially you take a young bird, a young stag, bull stag. I've had a hen in with them, say 6 months to a year, and they get along fine. And then you go up there one day, and she's, he's beat the crap out of her. I have no idea why they do it, but they do.
And that was a issue I had with my birds were originally from Colonel Gibbons. Okay. And when I first got them, the cocks were really rough on the hens. Mm-hmm. I had to really watch them because it's like you put a hen in there or you put him with a hen, he wouldn't beat the crap out of the hen at first, but then after that they were fine. It was like the initial meeting, he had to like show her who was boss, mm-hmm. beat the crap out of her for a little bit, and then everything was fine. And I just sucked for a better temperament, and it got better. And I think every time there's 2 things that because Tony had the same birds I had when we first started, and he still has them. There's 2 things Tony would always ask me every time we talk. Are you seeing ducktail on your birds? Which I did at one time. I don't anymore. And asking me how aggressive my cocks were to my hens every time. So I don't know if he still has an issue. I haven't talked to him in a little while, but those were the 2 things he'd ask me every time we talked.
I think a lot of times what you said earlier, I think temperament is breeding for temperament has a lot to do with it, because I've noticed a lot of my birds have got more docile with the hens as they, the more gentle they are with me, the more gentle they are with the hens. Now, if I take a young stag, I'm careful about putting any type hens in with them. And if I do it, I want it to be a big enclosure where they can get away from them. But that's the only thing I got to watch. The younger birds you've got to watch because they're inexperienced. They don't have any patience. And when the hen won't submit to them, they do what comes naturally. Mother Nature sets in and he tries to teach her lessons. Sometimes they go too far.
He didn't even give her a chance to decide whether it was a good thing or not, because he was in there. He was charging her the second he hit the ground and, whipped her butt. And then it was over with. I'd check them every day. They'd be fine. Every now and then I get one that would shuffle a hen and she just knocked her out. Didn't kill her, just knocked her out. Yeah. And she was out for a while, and then she kind of woke up. That cock came out as fast as I could, and out he went, gone. I don't tolerate that. So
that's the reason a lot of times the older hens, you can tell an older hen, they do not run from them. They do not reject them in any way. They just lay down and put the wings out and say, let's get it over with, and that's it. But a young pullet, she's all over the pen running from them, screaming her head off, and that just makes it worse for the cock. That just makes it worse when they do that.
Yeah. I'm watching Nancy. She looks like she's like getting ready to say something. Okay. But I also don't like the hens that sit up on the roost, don't want to come down.
Yeah.
So
my done that.
Yeah. So my pens are set up so that I can actually take the roost out I'll fix her. That
Done
roost
it
is
many
coming up for
times.
3 days, you know?
Yeah,
And then I'll put it back in.
I do
when-
that.
Yeah.
I'll pull the roost out, and once they become familiar with each other, then I'll put it back in. But like you say, you take some hens and put them in with a new cock that they're not used to. They'll go up on that roost and they'll sit there and they won't come off to eat, drink. I've had them actually get them out, and they've lost a lot of weight, dehydrated and starved to death. So yeah, that can be a problem.
Yeah, sometimes roosters doesn't even give her a reason to do that, and she stays up there. And like you said, she will starve to death up there. So
that's the live or die Mother Nature put in them, to protect herself at all costs.
Well, here's my question. Maybe she just isn't attracted to him, and you need to change that rooster out and give her someone she's more attracted to.
You've got something there, Nancy, and I'm going to say it. People may laugh at me, but and a lot of people's had chickens for a long time knows what I'm talking about. A lot of people says the weed hatches were my best birds ever, and I think a lot of that is because I'll have several strings out on my yard, and I'll have half a dozen cocks out on strings. Well, there'll be a particular hen come up to that cock, and she will roost on the pen with him. She stays right there with him. She takes to him. And I think a lot of times that's the reason the birds come out so much better, because they're actually choosing one another the way it comes out. But a lot of people, I've heard them say it day after day. I wish I know how these chickens were bred, because it's some of my best birds that I don't even know how they're bred. They're weed monkeys or weed hatch or whatever you have it. But I think a lot of that is the hen actually choosing the cock.
yeah. Yeah. But the problem with the weed monkeys, I guess you'd call it, is you don't know where they came from. And the best you can do with them is pick the best from them and make them your seed fowl and start over, and hope that their breeding is in line enough that you're not going to have the kind of genetic diversity you're going to have to weed through. That's the problem. Without selectively breeding them, put them together and making the choice yourself, you're forced to take birds that have a lot of variation that you may not want, that's going to take a long time to fix. And even though those birds are good, it's going to be tough to make a family out of them sometimes.
But one thing I have noticed, especially in the spring of the year or late fall, you'll have these big, nice stags with the big, especially if they're straight headed, the big bright red combs. You put one of those out and you put another 20 cocks out, and the majority of hens will go to that one with that big red comb every time. That's attractive. They'll go to them every time. I never did really believe that until I saw it with my own eyes.
Oh no, I believe it. And one of the reasons we have, our birds, especially the gamefowl, they're sexually dimorphic, especially in color. Okay. And one of the reasons that happens is because of sexual selection. The jungle fowl too. Whenever you see birds that where the male is different from the female, that's basically sexual selection at its best. That's the hen picking the male. Okay. And determining what direction they go from there. It could be color of feather. It could be size. It could be comb size. It could be the crow itself. It could be all kinds of stuff. The difference between Mother Nature and us is we're selecting the birds. We we decide who's going to mate to who, What's that, Nancy?
Kenny hit the nail on the head. Selection, don't select ugly, because the hen will run for its life.
Well, what she thinks is ugly, we may think is beautiful.
That's true.
So maybe the hen's head isn't right. You know what I mean? Maybe she's not thinking square.
That's true. But now a lot of times it takes, especially if it's you're just now pairing them up, it takes 3 or 4 weeks for that hen to really come around to that cock, if they do at all. Because like Kenny said, some of them will just get on the roost and they'll literally starve themselves to death rather than let that rooster even come close to them. So and then you throw one in, they automatically get along. I've seen it every way, and some of them just won't allow certain roosters to touch them. Yeah.
Well, I've seen hens where they did that, and no matter what rooster I put in it, they just weren't going to have any of it. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, especially a pullet. Especially a pullet. Oh man, it doesn't matter what type rooster. If it's a pullet, they're scared to death. They're screaming and hollering, flying all over the pen, running into things, trying to kill themselves, and they're just not having it. But usually a mature hen, she's got it all figured out, and usually there's not any problem if it's a mature hen.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to welcome some of our new members. We got quite a few new members. Make sure to check out the Start Here pages. There is a lot of information in there, so don't try to absorb it all at one time. If you need any help, let me know, and I can walk you through some of it. There's a lot of great programs and courses that you can check out. Just the Start Here pages is your best bet. And once you've been in there for a while, you get to know the website, kind of get to know how the website's laid out, get to know some of the programs and courses. If you need us to do coaching calls, we can. I just would rather you be in the website for a little while before we do it. So for the members, let's see. At the end of this show, meet us in the Breeders Academy for the Breeders Roundtable.
And what will we be talking about in the Breeders Roundtable tonight?
And Nancy didn't do her job. So
I was supposed to bring up the banners? Oh, shoot. Maybe I was. Marital dispute going on here. All I know is I'm supposed to start the ticker tape parade.
Frank, there's a few things I tell her every time before the show. You're handling the banners. Don't talk over us. Do this, do that. I waste my time. I'm telling you. I don't know why I tell her anything.
Lying.
Yeah. Now, maybe don't tell her. Now, Amanda's this way. If I tell her, she forgets or she doesn't do it. Now, if I don't tell her, she'll go on and do it, and I won't have to open my mouth.
Okay, I can talk now. Everybody's quiet. I'm not allowed to interrupt or talk over anybody. You don't tell me about the banners every time. You just tell me not to interrupt.
See, that's how much he hears me. So, oh boy. Okay. Time to hire.
All right, so what are we going to be talking about in the roundtable? You didn't answer my question.
The one we've been trying to talk about for the last couple of weeks, but we've been having issues. I think we've got it all ironed out. Frank, by the way, is your Wi-Fi off and it's
televisions are completely blank screened, and the iPad is on idle, and the telephone is as well. So the only thing that's getting any juice to it is the laptop. So we're good shape.
So last Monday we did kind of a system check and then a Q&A at the same time. We think we got ironed out. I didn't see any major issues, so I think we're good to go. So now we can get back on track to do the members roundtable after the show. This one's going to be clone worthy. How do you know if your bird is worth cloning or worthy of cloning? So we're going to talk about the different criteria that makes up the kind of bird that you want to replicate. And there's a part of the Founders Program that allows you to do that and shows you how to do that. So we're going to talk about that. I'm really liking the different topics we have lined up for the members roundtable. The front end is more of a conversation. I basically have a topic. We're going to cover some things, answer a few questions. Like this outline I have today, it started out very simple, Frank. It was so funny. And it just kind of pecking away and working on it and expanding it. I told Tani yesterday where I was looking it over, I'm going, holy crap. This went from an easy 45-minute show to probably a have you seen it? There's no way we're going to cover all that, It's really good stuff. So I'm thinking, and I told Tani that, she goes, you're going to have to make multiple parts. I go, I think you're right. You know what I mean? So, the front end, like I said, it's more, I enjoy the conversation, talking about breeding, just kind of go wherever the conversation takes us, answering a handful of questions. So if we're doing that, and we're finding a way to get people excited about becoming breeders, because although you put two birds together, I don't think you're actually breeding. If you're going to get serious about breeding, we can teach you that inside the Breeders Academy. We have a lot of good programs. So here, I'll do this for Nancy. So make sure you join the Breeders Academy today. And as a member, you're going to get the members roundtable, the Masters Class video series, the Founders Program, which I think is the best program on creating, improving, and maintaining a strain there is. The programs and courses that support the Founders Program, our members' resources. We also have the daily articles, and we're adding new and improved content weekly. Okay. You want to do the next one? I just want to know if you can do it.
I had my cursor on that banner.
Okay, next one.
I was ready. Okay, next one. Here we go.
Make sure to join our breeders bulletins, which are our newsletters. There you're going to get some free tips and articles on breeding, free ebooks on breeding. Just go to www.breedersacademy.com to subscribe. You'd be glad you did. That's the first step to joining the website. Okay, on with the show. Like I said, this is going to be a fun one, Frank. I always gravitate to topics that are fun to talk about, I guess you could say, that cover many aspects of breeding. I mean, it's hard for me just to pick one little thing and pick it to death. I like to take it and expand it take one topic and expand it into many topics. So we're covering a wide range of things. Now, like I said, this one kind of got away from me a little bit. So we're probably going to make multiple episodes with this, which I think is going to work out just fine. But the topics we do cover inside the Breeders' Academy for the members roundtable are very specific topics, because I mean, they're topics that we go in depth in. It's heavy into the breeding methods, breeding programs, how to actually get the most out of your birds. I mean, I like the topics on the back end because of how hard, how do you say it? How deep we go into the topic itself. You know what I mean? And it's always, because I come up with different topics, and I have to think to myself, okay, the topic on the front has to be more of a conversation, something fun to talk about, but yet the back end has to be something that's worthy of the members.
More educational.
And yeah, more educational, more scientific, I guess. And sometimes I create these topics and I go, no, I can't put this on the front end. This is a members type topic. So I end up making more of those than I do the front end. So I'm hoping this one will actually last a couple episodes. So
yeah, when I first saw it, sorry, Kenny. When I first saw it, I thought I was in the members. Like court was so long, and I thought, I wonder if he's thinking we're going to do all this tonight.
No, I knew I got myself in trouble with this one because it's just too big. But it'll be fun to talk about. And today we're going to talk about the things you can do to improve your success as a breeder. And I look at these as the pillars of success. Yeah. And these are the kind of things, if you look at some of the most successful breeders out there, these are the common denominators that they all do. We've talked about some of these many times. Some of them we haven't talked about in a while. So we'll go in deep on those. But it'll make good conversation. And if you guys have any questions or any comments, feel free to put them in the comments and Nancy will bring it up and we'll talk about it. It'll expand the conversation, make it even better. So,
but you want them to be on the topic though, right?
Yeah. Stay on topic as much as possible. Cause if we're all over the place and it's just going to feel like we're not covering anything, you know?
True.
So, but the successful breeders, they often have certain key characteristics and practices in common. And I have a handful of them here that we can but to talk about first. And then we'll go into the 8 areas of breeding that I actually think will improve your results. So I kind of got to split up into different categories. So the first one would be knowledge and expertise, Frank. They got to have the knowledge and expertise to be a breeder and to produce good, solid strains, I guess.
Yeah, well, they've got to take all that in. They've got to educate themselves. It's just like this scenario. Just because a mechanic's got every tool to work on your vehicle with, and he doesn't have the knowledge, still not going to happen. You can have every tool available to you, but if you don't have that knowledge on how it's done and how to do it, then there's no sense of even starting with it if you don't have the knowledge. You got to have the knowledge to start out with and then set it into skill.
And they have to have a really good understanding of the birds they're working with, their breed of choice, which you'd be surprised. We've been saying that a lot lately. that if you look at the breeders out there, the most common ones, the most popular ones, the ones people are always talking about when they're buying birds, it just surprised me that it's kind of amazing that they're supposed to be the experts, but they don't even know their own breed. They have no idea the proper makeup, the structure of they know the purpose for which the breed is bred for, but they really don't understand the bird itself.
Replicators.
Yeah, replicators.
Replicators. They put a bunch of hens in a pen with a cock, and whatever comes of it is what comes of it, and that's what they usually sell.
Yeah. I have selective breeding here, but I'm going to cover that later. But patience and persistence. And you kind of need that because you're going to run into times when things just don't go right. The birds don't turn out like you thought. And that's one of the things the Breeders' Academy and the Founders Program shows you, that when you run into snags, it shows you why you ran into that snag. That snag actually could be what you should be expecting. You know, it's like people will get certain results and not understand the results and just think it was a failure. Well, if you understand the breed, you understand the breeding, you understand the program, then you understand that you're right. You're probably right where you should be. And if we look at the first few stages of the Founders Program, which is a cleanup process, you'll realize really quick that what you see, which seems like it's not the right place, is exactly where you should be. It's telling you exactly what you want to know. So you got to be patient. You got to be persistent, and you got to work yourself through the problem.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head, Kenny, because if they're going through the cleanup process and say something wild happens, something comes up, by them knowing their birds and the back history of them, that's going to take a lot of that mystery when that stuff starts popping up. It's going to take a lot of the mystery out of what it is. It's going to allow them to stick to the method that they're doing and know that, okay, this wasn't my fault. This is the reason this happened. That's so big because a lot of times the first bad thing that happens in the breeding program, they ditch it. Or worse, they add outside blood.
Yeah, they give up too early. You know, they don't realize that what they're seeing is a lot of times what they should be seeing at that stage. Okay. Mark is bringing up a good one here. To breed well is necessary to know the basic principles of gamefowl genetics, or any genetics, no matter what breed, no matter whether it's domestic chickens, whether it's gamefowl, whether it's cattle, pigs, no matter what. You really do need to know the genetics so that when you're looking at the traits and you know the genetic factors of those traits, then you can properly select. I think he's right on the money. And that what he was saying is the principles of gamefowl genetics. What do you say? Necessary to know the principles of gamefowl genetics, selection and breeding process. So we say that all the time, how are you going to select properly and run them through the breeding process or even a breeding program if you don't really understand the genetics? Because you're not going to, like he's saying here, you cannot select properly if you don't know the genetics. I mean, most of the time, without knowing the genetic factors of those traits, you're just guessing. And it's one of the reasons they're not getting the results they think they should be getting.
What if I could go in to your mind and white blank of all the genetic information that's in your brain right now and then say, okay, Kenny, start from scratch and make this a family. Give you a cotton hen, say, make this a family. You're going to be there for a while.
1 minute, Nancy. I know she's eager to jump in. You know, a lot of people think that I just came into this and knew all the answers right away. Everything I'm seeing from our members, our followers, and everybody online, all the things they say, I totally understand why they say what they say, because I was there too. I was right where they were. I did the same things they were doing. I made the same choices they made. I looked at selection like they did. You know, the way they think today, we see this often. I thought the same way for the longest time. It wasn't until I met certain people like Tony and Doug and a number of other of my members that really woke me up. And between their birds and how good their birds and the results they were getting and what they were teaching me, which made completely sense, I put it into practice. It worked for me. They didn't want to teach it. I did. And started seeing the results in other people's birds. So I've been where these guys were. I know exactly what they're talking about. I know what they're thinking. I know what they're going through. I just moved on. I learned. And that's what we're trying to teach everybody else. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. from what I've been seeing just on Facebook this week with the different Facebook pages is unfortunately people do not know what they do not know.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and it makes me sad because I really want to help them, but because I'm on their page, being respectful to them, I don't post, well, just join the Breeders Academy and you'll learn everything you need to know. So I just hope that they find us someday.
Yeah, Nancy was talking to me about that today. And she used to always say, well, I'm going on these other pages. They seem like they need help. They got questions. I know that there was I was looking at this one page and this one young guy was having some issues and he was I think he was getting frustrated because I think people were kind of giving him a hard time. It wasn't really helping him. He was getting upset. And I think he was praising some of them that were actually willing to help him. I remember even seeing Frank get in there and say, hey, hang in there, guy. It gets better. And Nancy's like, why don't you give them help? And I go, that's someone else's page. I don't like jumping into someone else's page and give advice because I feel like I'm crossing the line. That's their page, and if I feel like if they need information from me, I think they know where to find me most of the time. And then I'll help them there. And I especially help them inside the Breeders' Academy. But I just feel like I try to be respectful of other people's pages and not come off. Because some people are going to take what I give them and like it. Some are going to take offense of it. I'm going to come off like a know-it-all to some people. You just never know what you're going to get. And then I know the people on my page are following me for a reason and they're receptive. They're open to what I'm going to teach them. And so that's where I try to stay.
In that scenario though, Kenny, in that type environment, you got to let them come to you.
Yep.
I hate to say it that way. I really do, but it has to be their decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of Frank, I did read his post to this one person this week and he was very uplifting and encouraging to him. And I feel like there's never enough of that. And I implore him and gave him a thumbs up that, he was telling the guy, just hang in there. It's going to be okay, kind of thing. And with that being said, it's not telling him, okay, well, first you start here and do this and this and this and that, and then follow me because I'm going to tell you exactly what to do next. And to do that, and that. He didn't go there. He was just giving him, you guys are laughing at me. He was just giving him encouragement that it's okay. You can do this and it can be done. And other people have been in the same place that you've been in. So, I appreciate that about Frank is he's so kind to other people.
That, not everybody would say that. I don't think, Nancy. There'd be a few out there that would say the opposite, would argue with you on it. But the thing about it is, and also I told him a lot of these guys that get on there, that's know-it-alls, that he was talking about, that he was calling the a-holes, so basically they see somebody new, they want to pounce on them and make them look foolish, ridicule them, and I bet you anything. I bet any amount of money you want to bet, if you sit down with that guy and give him a one-on-one with chickens, he probably knows less than the guy that he's ridiculing. It's like the drunk guy at the big drunk guy at the bar at all mouth, running his mouth. A lot of times, they're nothing. The quietest man in the room usually is the one that you need to look out for, usually. And it's the same way with anything else.
Yeah. I run into two things when I do that. When I give my advice on other people's pages, some are like, oh, Kenny's there. Let me ask him a question, and then it becomes a never-ending Q&A that I can't get away from because I don't want to come off bad, basically. Or it's me just arguing back and forth with people that just want to just criticize and have a problem with everything you say. Okay. So then what's my other resource is to what? Post my website on there or my pages or my show? Well, then I feel like I'm overstepping because I'm promoting my stuff on other people's pages. So I don't like to do that, So I feel like the old saying, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And so it's like, I believe what Frank says is that when they need me, they're going to find me. And if they're willing to be open to what I'm going to teach them, then we're good and I'll help them. But I mostly do that on the website these days. So,
Well, it's like the old saying, you can take a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. And that's true.
Yes, Joseph, this was the issue I was having today when I was talking it over with Kenny is when you see folks seeking the correct help, you encourage them to continue. Many don't even know what information to seek or how to ask about it.
Yeah.
Well said.
in that term, they don't know what they don't know. You would think it's just the beginners. It's not just
That's
the
true.
beginners.
It's not.
It's the so-called experts and the people who've been doing this for a long time. It's amazing what they don't know that they don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
I learned something new. If I go looking for it, I can learn a bunch of stuff every day. Okay.
Yeah.
Whether it's on nutrition, breeding, concerning a chicken. If I go looking for it, I can educate myself more every day I go looking for it. And I think anybody can. I don't care how much knowledge you got. If you go looking for it, you can learn something every day of your life if you want to.
Part of it is, and I want to say is the first thing that comes to my mind is find the right mentor. Man, that is so hard to do because some people that are willing to give the advice they're giving isn't really that good because they don't know what they don't know. That should have been the title of today's show.
It's usually stuff they hear that they've not even been taught, that they've seen other people sharing on Facebook. Now, is it the right information? Is it the wrong? But that's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up, Kenny. That's another thing I told that kid. I said, make sure not to learn from everybody. Find one guy that you think that is a good, honest breeder and follow his, get him to help you. Don't learn from everybody. If you learn from everybody, you're walking down a path that you never want to go. It will take him longer to get rid of the not true facts, the old wives' tales and superstitions. Once you get those in there, it's hard to get them back out. I've been there, done that, and it's hard to get rid of those and go down a path to where science and fact doing it. But once you get started on that path, you never come back off that path because the rest of it's garbage.
It's like whoever you decide to learn from. And I did this too, even with Tony and some of the other mentors. It wasn't like I was testing their knowledge. Is that they would always say something to me that make me question some stuff. So I would do my research. And back then, the internet, there was no internet. Or the internet that was around wasn't even that good. So I would get whatever books I could, whatever information I could, and I would learn. I would take what they taught me and take it farther. And I could see from what they taught me, some of it was right. Some of it was in the ballpark, and there was a handful of things that were just still wrong. And so I would take what they taught me and learn more and then put it into practice. And then I would go to someone else that I respected and I would learn even more. And I would say, no matter who you're learning from, no matter who your mentor is, maybe question if even a little bit you doubt just a little bit, then do your research and see if you can learn a little more and find out whether that's true or not. Because you might find that what they're saying is close, but not right, not exactly right. But then you can learn a little more and take it to the next level. And that opens up other doors, other opportunities. And before you know it, you're moving from this subject to this subject to that subject. And before you know it, you're a well-rounded breeder. And that's what I did. So it was never enough just to take someone's word for something. I had to research it and learn more. And then that opened up other things. It's like I learned a lot of selective breeding practices, which opened the door to evolutionary biology, believe it or not, which evolutionary biology covers a lot of things. It covers evolution, which is a big area to learn, which you'll realize that a lot of the mechanisms of evolution resemble selective breeding. That also opens the door to genetics, and once you understand genetics and realize how that works and that you can't really, select your birds properly without understanding genetics. You can see where I'm going, and we're going to cover, I'm trying to be careful because I have part of that on the outline and I want to cover that the right way. So we're kind of jumping around just a little bit.
Jameson's got it figured out. There, Nancy, if you want to read that one, that's a good one.
Frank, learning from everybody is mongrel knowledge that will need extensive cleaning up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a good way to put it. And that's basically what happens. But you was talking about there wasn't any internet, Kenny, back when we was coming up and doing this. The closest thing we had to the internet was the Gamecock, magazine. That's the closest thing we had to the internet right there, usually, or Dead Man books, or some old poetry books. That's all we had, and even those were hard to come by, and not everybody could get them. But to say, like one of my mentors, well, he wasn't really a mentor. He was just a real good breeder, and he was old school as he could be. When I would ask him those tough questions on how and why this needs to be done, he would always, when I get him stumped and in a corner, he'd always say, well, that's the way God made it. That's the way Mother Nature made it. He didn't know how to explain it, so he would get out of it by, well, that's just the way it is. But he never could tell me exactly the scientific way of it being, and he'd always have that loophole of, well, that's the way the good Lord made it, or that's just the way it is.
That's where best of the best comes from too, by the way.
Yeah, true.
But I was in 4-H, not 4-H, but FFA when I was a kid, and it was just lucky happenstance. I'm telling you. I think back at how that happened is when I was in there, they had all the old Dead Man books from earlier classes, like from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they had them all on the table, and they were just giving them away to the students. Nobody wanted them. It was so funny. I just started scooping them up. I started scooping one of each of them. I had a whole stack of them, and I took them home on livestock breeding and poultry husbandry, you name it. Okay. And as a kid, even as Nancy, when we first got married, I was always sitting opening those books and reading through them all the time. Okay. I can't remember a time that I wasn't at least opening one and looking at it. And then I remember this was back when I was playing professional golf. eBay came on the scene. And I remember buying a lot of books of eBay at that time. And then I remember Amazon came on shortly after that, and I started finding books there. But you've seen my library, Frank. It's huge. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I don't buy as many books as I used to, but there was a time I was buying a book here and there, and I couldn't read them fast enough. I'm learning from them. And it was every time I opened a book, it was like a wow factor. It was like, oh my God, this is cool. You know what I mean? And then put it into practice, check it out, start teaching it, start seeing results. Between my results and my students' results, it became set in stone when it came to what I taught, And then I started doing the seminars. It was cool.
Well, how cool is it to actually research something, okay? Take it in, read it several times to where you understand it in total, just the way the members do in the Breeders' Academy. And then you put it to use and you see it evolving the way that you read it. Now that's the awesome side of it, is once you get all that knowledge from those books, from those articles, and then you see it appearing right before your very eyes and it all working together. That's what gives it that wow factor. That's when that light bulb comes on over your head in the cloud. Okay. Yeah. That's what puts everything in perspective. And then when you see that happening, then those old wives' tales and those old stories that was handed down by generations and generations, count the scales on the legs, that sort of thing. You no longer have those in your mind. They have no room for that in your breeding whatsoever.
There's a number, maybe a dozen different key things I learned that pretty much wiped out all the old wives' tales that we've been hearing all these years when it came to breeding gamefowl. And one, Frank and I was talking about, I think it was last week, that there's some people that they pretty much follow us on everything, but there's a handful of things that they just cannot get themselves to accept. And one of them is that there's no correlation between color and performance ability. And that was something we've heard for a long time. And I know why it's so ingrained in people's mind and why they just can't let it go, and why it's been just, that phrase or that idea just never went away. And there's three things that make it go away pretty fast once you do the research: meiosis, Well, let me not three. It won't sound like three things the way I'm explaining it. Well, let me say, okay, meiosis, sex linkage, or linked genes, that is, and the independent assortment of genes, which is Mendel's second law. So if you look at meiosis, you look at how the creation of gametes is, how they take the traits from both I'm trying to sum this up really quick, and I don't want to go too deep in it, but you take the traits of the mother and father, and you combine them. Okay, then they split off, and through crossover, it creates multiple gametes, which creates variation, which basically is you're recombinating whatever genes are there. And then those genes, how they line up on the chromosomes is dependent on whether they're correlated and if they're passed together. Okay, color and performance ability are not only correlated, they're not passed together. They're also polygenic traits, which are determined by multiple genes. So you can see why they're not passed together. And then if we look at Mendel's law of independent assortment of genes, that basically shows you that everything we thought about meiosis is true. And so once I started learning meiosis, Mendel's law of independent assortment of genes, gene linkage, then I realized that this idea of correlation, especially the correlation that people think that they're getting, doesn't work. You know what I mean? So once I understand that and start teaching it, it started changing people's mind. And we are changing the trend, Frank. It's getting better and better. And if we keep doing this, there's going to be some people just ain't going to let it go, are going to be left behind.
Yeah. Well, that's what I keep telling everybody that thinks they can breed hybrid birds and still pass on the traits that those birds is holding. And that's what I tell them. I said, listen, the only thing you got to do is study meiosis. And I promise you, once you get a hang of that, that proves your fact that, white birds are no good, black birds are no good, depending on the color, and that explains it all in a nutshell. Just what you mentioned right there. That's all they've got to educate themselves on, pretty much, as the meiosis part, and that debunks all of it.
And the other one was, when you look at meiosis, the independent assortment of genes and gene linkage, the idea, like Frank said, is you have a family, you feel like they're pure, you've been breeding them pure for a long time, you add new blood to refreshen them, thinking you're going to breed those bad genes back out again over time to where they're pure again. When you look at meiosis, the independent assortment of genes and gene linkage, you realize that doesn't work either. You know what I mean? That all you did was recombinate the genes and change the family forever. So there's certain things that we've been clinging on all this time that, with a little bit of knowledge of science, a little bit of knowledge of genetics and its factors of traits, a little bit of evolutionary biology and the mechanisms of evolution, how they resemble selective breeding, we realize almost all the old wives' tales we've been clinging to, and I still hear them today. It just drives me nuts. They're not true. That none of it works like they think it does, and they just keep talking to each other like it's a real thing when it's not. It's the blind leading the blind. They're not learning a damn thing.
The greatest thing I ever done was got involved in studying genetics and a proper breeding program. That right there set me up to where I wasn't only raising chickens anymore. I was actually doing the breeding. And that opened my eyes up so much, guys. I mean, to read it, to hear it, to study it is one thing. But to put it into a skill and actually use it, and you see the results from it, I mean, it's an eye opener. The science part of it proves to you that it all works. You don't have to guess and say, well, I hope this works out. You're seeing it as it's happening. You don't have to guess or hope. You see it, the whole process of it going on. And so many people out there, Kenny, speaking of, since we're on the meiosis, they're breeding these hybrid birds, expecting for a miracle, and it won't happen. Yes, you can take those hybrid vigor birds, those hybrids, and make a good strain out of them, but using a proper breeding program, like the Founders Program. But you just can't breed mongrel, or let me back up, I won't even call them mongrel. Can't breed cross birds over and over again and expect a good outcome. You can't do it. At some point, you're going to have to add blood to them. At some point, if you don't know any way around it. But if you've got a good breeding program, you're selecting the way you need to be, and you've got the knowledge on how to do it, you can take a family and keep them until your deathbed and never have to add any blood to them if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nancy.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I can see all on your face. Well, the ones that get me the most is when they say, for our birds, genetics doesn't work. You don't need to know about genetics. You don't need to know about conformation of body. Those are for pretty birds. That one just cracks me up. They always want to, it's always the things they don't want to learn or actually advance their knowledge or take the time to learn properly, that they just want to mark it off as those are for pretty birds. That, I don't know. That just gets me. And like Frank was saying, whenever you cross birds, let's say you have family that's fairly pure. They've been inbred for long enough to see some uniformity. Okay, and you breed them together. And then it's a cross. I get that. But we're not dealing with very many crosses these days. We're actually dealing with mongrelization, because when you do a cross, breed two pure birds, you get hybridization. When you breed three or more different bloodlines together, now you got mongrelization. Okay, I know that upsets people, but it's true. And it's not that it's a bad thing. It is if you're trying to create a family or trying to maintain a family. It's a real bad thing. But as far as mongrelization, can you select birds as seed fowl from mongrel stock? Yeah. I mean, if they represent their breed, have the traits you're looking for, they don't have any serious defects, they're not sick, they have the right type and conformation, those are good specimens as seed fowl to create a strain. And then you just have to match them properly to a bird that has the same breed characteristics in color, so that you're not fighting your way through it, because the closer they are, the better you're going to be to the better it's going to be to create a strain from. I know the cleanup process of the Founders Program works pretty good, but when you've got two birds that are from different breeds or different varieties, that cleanup process is going to take a while. And so I always try to tell people that, yes, you can find good birds and bad birds from a good breeder. You can find good birds and bad birds from a peddler if you know what you're looking for.
That's the key.
Yeah.
All right. I remember what I was going to say. When you were talking about how people like, I'm just going to add some new blood for a season or two, and then I'm going to breed it out.
Yeah.
Explain to me how you breed out the genetics that, I mean,
I can tell you what they're thinking.
I know what they think is when they don't see them anymore, it becomes recessive, and then they don't see it anymore. But it's still there.
No. Okay. Here's how they see it. They think they have a pure family. They start thinking they're running into problems. Usually they're more worried about inbreeding than anything else, or they see issues. Instead of working through the issue, they think they need to add new blood. So they go to their friend, they find blood they think is better than theirs. Okay. They breed them in, and then they breed the offspring back to their birds, generation after generation, like in a back crossing situation. I don't even want to call it line breeding. To the point when they start getting some kind of uniformity, they think they bred it out, which they didn't. It's still there, especially the recessives. Those hidden recessives just don't go away. But in the meantime, they eliminated many of the homozygous dominant genes that they needed. Okay. And because the birds were somewhat of the same variety, they think they got away with it, which they didn't. And then once they start getting them uniform again, then they do it all over again. They add new blood and do the process all over again. So I can see why they see it that way. I can see why they think that works, but we know through science that it doesn't.
Yep. They add outside blood. Okay. They make one cross with their birds. Okay. This is what I see.
Yep.
Say Kenny's got white-legged Kelsos, straight-headed. I've got the same thing. Say out-and-out Kelsos.
Hey, Frank, let's do this one. This more people would understand this one. You got a hatch family, and you think you want to add a seal to it. Go that direction. That will relate to that one.
Yeah, but I'm going a different way here, though.
Okay.
Say, for instance, Kenny's got out-and-out Kelsos. I got out-and-out Kelsos.
Oh, okay.
We're playing the name game, all right?
Okay.
They think, Okay, mine's kind of going downhill. I need to freshen them up a little bit. I go get one of Kenny's birds, I breed it to mine, and then they're freshened up. But they're still pure. They're still pure, out and out Kelsos. That's how people think about it. But only thing they done was make a cross. That's the only thing they done. Yeah, they may be out and out Kelsos, what you call them. But if you done DNA on those, they're not even related. They're nowhere even close to being related unless you got them from the same farm, from the same breeder. And then maybe.
Check out our episodes on the name game, because that's a whole episode all by itself. That those
I
names,
can even handle that. I
What's
mean,
that?
I can handle it to a certain point, the name game. I can understand it to a certain point, to where somebody says, "Hey, I got some chickens. They were called on Blueface Hatch." Then I've got some idea what kind of chicken they've got. I can handle it to that point. Are they really Blueface? No, they never will be. They're gone. They're done for. But I can handle it in a conversation to where they're using it to explain to me what they have. I can handle that.
Not to be opposite of you exactly, and I understand why you say that. I would have been more agreeable about that years ago, because there was a time when I was younger that when someone said they had a hatch, they looked like a hatch. They weren't. They did a good job, I mean, because they always bred to a certain type. When they said Kelso, they usually had a certain look about them. Clarets especially. They had a certain look about them. They had that wineish red color with the white legs and the black spurs, and they were straight comb. Okay. With the round heads, they had a certain look about them too. Okay. So we kind of understood, and it's for a long time, it did seem like it was real. That's why we followed it. Man, you look on Facebook, or I judge a show, or I go to someone's farm and they're mentioning all these different names. Frank, they don't even look like the names they used to. They don't resemble the types that we used to be familiar with. They're completely different now. They're just a mix up of blood. I don't even know how they keep track of it, because there's nothing that resembles those bloodlines. I know they didn't exist then, but at least we bred them to resemble a certain type. They don't even do that anymore.
No, because one man, and it's what I tell everybody. One man's blue face is gold. Another man's blue face is junk. And you bring them together and put them side by side, they don't look a thing alike. That's
Nope.
how I see it, pretty much.
That name is getting more people in trouble more now today than before, than anything else I can think of. And because of that name game doesn't work, it's not real. Then the percentage game doesn't work either, because if those names aren't real, then the percentage game can't work, because all you're doing is mixing up blood, adding new blood, mongrelizing them even more. And any improvements or bump you think you're getting, it's just hybrid vigor, and it's very temporary. You can't pass hybrid vigor to the next generation. It's not inheritable.
I seen a post there. It's been a couple of weeks back, and me and a buddy of mine was talking about it. And it said, pure Blueface Hatch. And the hen and the cock was blue-legged. Dark blue-legged. And they was pure hatch and blue-legged. So go figure. Anybody knows how you get blue legs, then it's got a lot of white legged blood in it. So to get the blue. So think about that.
What's he saying, Nancy?
You're 100% correct, Kenny. I can't even talk with my family about fowl. They're stuck on hybrid vigor and the name game, half this, half that, but have no idea of what a true breeder actually is.
Sam is right. I mean, without that name game and the percentage game, these guys can't even talk to each other. You know what I mean? That's the only way they're able to carry on the conversation. If you wipe that out, they wouldn't know what to say to each other.
But it's got better over time. But back 15 years ago, if you called a bird of yours something else other than what it's supposed to be in, say a Kentucky Roundhead, they'd have crucified you for saying that. That's not what that is. You got them somewhere. What was the breed before you got them? Or you could say, okay, this is a breed that I made, and this is Colonel Gibbons' bloodline, and they had to choose, and the one that I made be 5 times the birds than the Colonel Gibbons. They go to Colonel Gibbons every time.
I had that problem too, because I got to the point when my birds didn't resemble the Colonel Gibbons. Anybody I knew that had Colonel Gibbons, my bird looked nothing like him. And I even had outside blood. I just selectively bred them. So I started calling them the Maximus line. And I did. I didn't, it just like they couldn't accept it. They just couldn't wrap their mind around it. And they would just keep digging and digging. And I would just finally tell them, okay, I originally got them from Colonel Gibbons, but I'm going to flat out tell you, they're nothing like those birds anymore. They're like anybody else's Colonel Gibbons. And I just don't feel good about calling them Colonel Gibbons. You know, I just can't play that game. And once I understood what the name game was all about, I really couldn't play it. I mean, that's just something. Someone starts talking to me about different, names. I can go along with it for a little bit, in that I understand that that's their understanding of that particular bird. That's, how do I say this? It's like when I do coaching calls. Many times I'll go, okay, I know you don't like the name game, but all I can tell you is this is what they were called when I got them, and this is where I am. Okay, I get that. That's a starting point. We can move on from there.
That's
okay, we can at least start the conversation. But I make it very clear to them that you understand that once you start going, you start getting into the program, you start breeding them yourself. Now we got to move away from that name. Now they're yours. Because to continue using that name is a disservice to your birds and yourself.
Well, the thing about it is, yes, yours was Colonel Gibbons. You got them from Colonel Gibbons. He was alive, still breeding birds. Kenny got them from him. Yes, when he got them home, they were still Colonel Gibbons. But here's the thing. When Kenny went past the brood fowl the seed fowl that he got from Colonel Gibbons and started selecting his own birds and choosing the traits that he wanted those birds to have, to me, they're no longer Colonel Gibbons. They're Kenny Troianos, whatever he calls them, because he's not, the guy you got him from is not doing the selecting. He's not doing the breeding anymore. You are. So that makes them your birds, not some legendary big time breeder name. That's how I see it.
And when I got him, he didn't call him Colonel Gibbons. He said, these are the old Harold Brown blood, but I didn't even call him that. You know
that's
what I
where
mean?
he got him from. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where he got his from.
Yeah. That's what he told me. It's just the old Harold Brown blood. And for a while there, I did call him Colonel Gibbons, but I just saw them changing. Every time I saw someone's Colonel Gibbons, they were nothing like mine. And mine just continued to change. And everybody kept out. Even Tony would ask me, what'd you put in them? Like, why put anything in them? I just selectively bred them to where they're at now.
That's funny. Tony asking that though. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I had a conversation, what was it, 6 months ago? I was talking to Tony, and I don't know. It seems like he's kind of hugging. I mean, he's kind of hanging on to some of the old wives' tales himself a little bit. I'm like, Tony, are we talking about the same thing? I can't believe you're saying that. So we're starting to get to the point where we weren't on the same page anymore. I don't know. I'm a little confused about it, to tell you the truth.
He's doing too many of those.
He's talking to too many people.
He's going to too many UGBA meetings is what he's doing.
I don't get it. I'm like, Tony, are we really talking about this? Is this what you're saying? It's like, I'm like, okay, I don't know. So, but I can't do that. But the other one, Frank, is attention to detail. All the good breeders I know really paid attention to, the big things, but the small things too. And those are the things that make the biggest difference, because as long as you're breeding to your family to represent their breed, but you pay attention to the small things, you make them your own, which is really cool. You make them unique without changing the breed. And only good breeders, only the breeders I know that I would call good breeders, were able to do that. Everybody else thought they had to add new blood to get it.
Yeah, and that's the reason I don't understand these guys. They go buy birds from people, some good, some bad. But even if they get good birds, they're constantly trying to make them just the way they are. They never try to improve them. They never try to put them on a path to where they're going up, being better. They will, and they stick with the same. Say, for instance, even seed fowl, they just breed those over and over and over and over again until they die, and they never go forward with them, ever.
Well, yeah, because they spent $1,500 on that trio. I'm going to get the most I can out of that trio. I understand that. And I fought with Kenny about that before. I'm like, well, they spent so much money on these things. But then when he explained to me why you can't just keep going back to the mother and father, the Adam and Eve. I really get it now, because you're just staying stagnant. You're not moving forward.
Even if they only use them the one time, and they spent $3,000 on them, and they got off to a good start, then they did good.
That's worth it.
It is worth it. And trying to get them to understand that is hard. And I get it. Like Nancy said, I totally understand their angst about that they spent so much money and they want to get the most out of it. Well, if they bred the crap out of them and they got as many offspring as they could, so they got a good selection, they were able to move forward and create a family from that, then they did good. But we see it so many times. Nancy was talking to me about it today. I don't remember exactly what we're talking about, but I kind of remember part of the conversation in that I can't remember. Do you remember how that conversation went, Nancy? Something about breeding in outside blood. No. Breeding backwards. You were asking me about breeding backwards today. Okay. And you were asking why that's a big deal. And you were looking at some of the elements of the Founders Program. I said, well, that's not breeding backwards. There's a reason why you do that. Breeding backwards is when you're working you're multi-generations, like in a cloning program, you're getting to a point of uniformity. You're actually making some progress. And then instead of taking them to the next step, you bring in blood from earlier, like the original broodfowl. Let's say they're getting old, you're getting all worried, you want to make sure you get the most of them, and you breed them right back into that family. You reintroduced all the genes you worked out, you reintroduced all the defects that you eliminated, and you start it completely over. And to me, that's breeding backwards. You never want to breed backwards. I see it all the time. They get to a point when they're making progress, and then they breed the original blood right back into them again, and they screw everything up.
Yeah. It's okay to keep them for a insurance policy for a little bit in case something happens. You never know. I could see that, but just what Kenny said, why would you go forward 4 or 5 years and then turn around and take the birds that you started with, your Adam and Eve, and breed them back into your family and just push everything back down to start over again, reset everything again, like Kenny said. Yeah. It's crazy. But this is what I think. If we explain that to them that way, then they get an ideal of it and they know better. But I think a lot of times people does that without really thinking the process over or really even thinking in that way.
Now, Frank knows someone, and this was such a good idea. When I heard it, I was like, wow, this is really good. He had a trio, paid good money for it, if I remember right. He got the family going. Once he was convinced that the family is on its way, he sold the original trio to someone else. And then they started their family with it. And
then they sold them.
And he got his money back. Okay, got his family started, made sure they were gone so he didn't reintroduce them into the family, and resold them to someone else who was able to do the same thing. So I thought that was such a great idea, Make sure
I had a friend.
Yeah.
I had a friend. That's what he wanted to do. He was in academy, and I sold him a pair of the yellow-legged birds I got, like reds, and he bred them, got his start. Then a buddy of his lived there close, paid him what he gave me for the birds, and he started them with. And then another guy after that used them to start his with. But here's the thing. They showed me pictures of those birds. That's been 5-6 years ago. None of them, all 3 of them look like totally different families.
Yeah.
They look totally for what they selected.
Yeah, selection. Mark has a fetish with cold beer. That's all I know. Every time I see him say something, it's always connected to cold beer. He says breeding gamefowl is an art and a science at the same time. This requires knowledge, experience, and passion, and most important, cold beer. I forgot what I was going to say about that. It is an art. It is a science. Mm-hmm. Understanding the difference between the two and how they're connected is really important. And yes, you need to have the knowledge and experience and the drive to make it all happen. I totally agree. And you don't forget the cold beer. So,
if I added the cold beer to it, I would have mongrels. Okay. I'd be a breeding everything. I'd have the most mess ever.
The problem is, and where he maybe messes up is how much cold beer. Because if you're like Frank says, if you drink too much beer, who knows what you're breeding together, you know?
Yeah,
So it's a
forget what
balance of
hen
all of them,
you
right, Mark?
yeah,
No.
forget what hen you used. Be putting different wrong colors with each other. Everything that would
It's
be
like
me.
don't call when you're drunk. You're
No,
probably going to call the wrong birds. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, that
I
would be
think
bad.
I actually think that cold beer is just to keep him steady so that he doesn't freak out when he sees a few duds out of his offspring.
or
Now,
in the way he's putting it here, it's a celebration. You know, so
There you
I,
go. Yes.
I remember those days. I used to come home hard day after work, get a cold beer out of the refrigerator, long neck, and you could see how cold it was, and take a drink of that. And a lot of times it would bring tears to my eyes. It tasted good, but anymore I don't have that luxury. So
yeah. The last thing I want to talk about tonight, and then we're going to move on to the back end, would be adaptability. They're adaptable and willing to adjust their breeding strategies based on new information and technology. I can't talk all of a sudden. Technical advancements. Okay, I'll shorten it for you. For some reason, I can't spit that out today. They're always willing to improve their knowledge of breeding, skills as a breeder, and their farm setup and management. And they're always looking for ways to improve their strain. Kind of goes with Mark was just saying a second ago, and a little bit about what we were talking about. It's like everything we were saying goes right into this topic right here. So people need to they got to be open-minded and willing to learn, and maybe realize what they've been taught all this time is wrong.
yeah. Well, I put a post up there the other day, and I can't remember how it went, but it was pretty much people has been taught on hand-me-down stories, but they've never researched it to see if it's facts or if it's not true. The thing is, somebody can sit you down and educate you, tell you how to do something, but how does that make them right? Research it. Somebody tells you something, research it.
Yeah.
Even if it makes sense, research it and see if that's the actual truth. Yeah, I've had plenty of good mentors, people to help me down the road to give me some good information. But one thing I did, because a lot of people back in my younger years, me and Kenny was talking about this last week, they would tell me stuff just to waste my time and get a good laugh out of it, sort of bust my chops with it, get a tickle out of it. So after that, even though they tell me something, it sounded logic, like it's what it was, I would still research it before I would do it.
Yeah. You can never learn enough, and you can never improve your skills enough. There's always room for improvement, improving you, improving your fowl, improving your farm. I mean, I just don't, okay, what's that? Our door rang. You can never, once you stop learning, you kind of become stale. That's a bad, I feel like I know a lot and I can help a lot of people, but I never stop learning. I'm always.
No.
What the heck is going on there?
It's like anything, though. You rest, you take breaks. It's hard to get back in the groove of it again. And a lot of things will go hidden in your mind. If you're not using it every day or talking about it or, staying with it, you'll lose some of it. But, it makes it easier when you do get back at it, though it starts coming back to you and using it. But like Kenny said, many times, once you learn it, It's there with you. It's like riding a bike. You may go 5 years without riding a bike and you're a little shaky when you first get on it, but you still remember the principles of it, how to do it.
Yeah, I think it's easier for me because I'm always creating new material. I'm always working on new things, and I'm always working with our members, and we're always doing new shows. So I'm not only refreshing and continually working on the thing, or how do I want to say this? Relearning or remembering everything I've learned, but I teach it, but I'm always learning new things too. So maybe it's easier for me because I just put myself in that situation where I have to constantly learn,
Well, how many times have you been talking with somebody
that too,
and just a coaching call, and they would say something or you would say something, and it'd be like something switch, and you'd like, oh, I remember that now. Something that you had forgotten way back, and it was still in your mind. It's just that you needed something to bring it to the surface. And then you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that. I woke up in the middle of the night and say, yes. And man, I was like, what in the world's wrong with you? Oh, I just remembered something. Sorry.
No, that happens to me all the time. Ask Nancy. Her and I talk all the time, and things will just pop in my head. Or Nancy will say something a certain way. I'm like, oh crap, write that down. Or Tani and I, Tani and I would be talking. I'll go, oh, I'll be driving the car. Go pull something out, write that down, or something. Or like you said, I'll be doing a coaching call, and I'll either remember something that I had forgotten, or something will pop in my head and make me want to research something.
Or something new.
Yeah.
Or something totally new. I've done that so many times, just talking to people about, breeding chickens in general. And it would bring up something like, ooh, I think that's a good idea, and you try it and it was a good idea.
I'm always digging into science a little deeper and a little deeper. And it's like, well, like Brian Reeder, he was teaching me some things that I never heard before, but I was like, it was like a constant wow factor. Like, oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Now I get that. Yeah. I've seen that before. I didn't understand why that happened. Now that makes sense. I love that feeling of learning something new like that. Okay. It's like a lightning bolt. I can't explain the feeling of when I learn something new,
I was talking to one of my friends, and I've been trying to figure out some stuff on nutrition. And we wasn't even talking about nutrition. We were just talking about chickens, messaging to each other like me and you do, Kenny. And all of a sudden he said one word, and it was just like it all opened up and laid out for me. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And we weren't even talking about nutrition. So it will come to you when you least expect it a lot of times.
Yeah. Like Joseph said, light bulb moments. Exactly. Well, I mean, look at this. We haven't even barely dug into this outline today, but it turned out to be a really good conversation, but the outlines are like that, where I'm putting together information. I'm creating a topic. I'm creating some bullet points that I want to talk about that has something to do with that particular topic. And it just brings up things. Now, some things are in my head that just come out all the time, and because they're that important, and it'll seem like I talk about some things more than others, or I talk about some things a lot.
Repetition.
And I do think it's that important. Okay. It's kind of my way of saying, hey, open your mind. This is a big deal. Take advantage of it. Take it seriously. Implement it. Some things are a big deal, and they're associated with a lot of other things. Like we talked about meiosis. Meiosis sounds simple to some people, but it's a huge factor when it comes to breeding and understanding the results you're going to get. Well, that's connected to a lot of things. Mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is connected to a lot of things. It seems simple, but once you understand mitochondrial DNA, understand how to select for it, the benefits of it, what you get, the results you're going to get, man, that stuff sticks with you forever. And you practice it properly, you're going to see big results. So there's something
make or break.
Yeah,
it's a make or break.
Yeah,
it is.
So,
and you'll learn all those terms inside the Breeders' Academy.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, is there anything we want to talk about, or anything we want to mention or say before we go to the back end and start talking to our members? We got a really good topic on the back end. Clone worthy. How do you know if the bird is worth cloning?
That's a much asked question with the members, the new members.
It'll be a fun one to talk about. You know what I mean? So.
And I apologize that I had to get up and leave you for a second. We had the pizza guy at the house at the front door.
I figured that's what it was.
I didn't order her pizza. He scared the crud out of me. I'm like, oh, who's at my front door?
Yeah, we don't get visitors. We don't get people just knocking on our door.
I said, okay, thank you.
It's in the mail. Is
it paid for? Okay, yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, most time this day at DoorDash, it's already paid for. You just got to tip the guy. Tip free pizza.
Yeah,
that's a win-win.
He scared the crud out of me. He was at the wrong house.
Kenny was like, "What the heck?
Yeah, what the heck?
Yeah.
You're ruining my show."
Yeah. I tried to speak to him very quietly. We had 2 questions, but they're not related to our show topic. So If we're out of time, we're out of time.
If they're members, ask them on the back end inside the website. Okay, we're way over time today, or come back next week and ask us then.
Well, one of them one of the questions we would have had to answer in the back anyway.
Okay.
So yeah,
but we're gonna. This has become a really good topic, and I still have the 8 topics that we didn't even dive into yet. So we're gonna cover those next week. This is a really good outline. This is gonna be a fun one, especially when we get into embracing the science. That's a fun one. So we'll talk about that. What's that?
Lee says, join the Breeders Academy and boost your IQ.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. So thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for coming and watching and listening and contributing to the comments and the questions. And it's a good show. Did good.
Yeah.
So we'll see you guys next week. See you guys later.
See you guys.